There's two really important things, Chris. One is the story of the business, and the second is getting the incentivization piece right for those non-family employees.
Hello, and welcome to the Scale, Structure and Sell podcast, where we help ambitious business owners grow and sell their businesses. I'm Chris Dowling, an investment manager at Quilter Cheviot, and joining me here today is Rob Davies, a tax specialist from Foot Anstey. In each episode of this podcast, we're answering a question that we're commonly asked by our clients. And the question for today that we'll be solving is, when's a good time to let go of the reins, and how should I go about doing it? So Rob, what are the main things that are on your clients' minds at the moment?
Well, Chris, it's great to be on the podcast, so thanks very much for inviting me. And, forefront of mind at the moment has to be the changes to the tax environment that have arisen in the last year, 18 months or so.
Yeah.
Whether that's taxes on the business themselves or the way that the inheritance tax changes will impact business owners going forward.
If I had to summarise it slightly crudely, I think what I would say is that our clients have gone from a position where drifting was an option and it had a long-term tax benefit to one where really they need to make decisions now. Is that what you see?
That's absolutely right, yes. And in many cases, not doing anything was a perfectly acceptable choice. One that few business owners now have. And conversations are definitely moving towards, how should we plan for the future and what conversations should I be having with my children or other interested parties.
So why now?
So why now is because these changes are coming in imminently. I think some business owners were holding out some hope for the rules to be perhaps reversed or changed, but that's not what's happening. They're with us to stay now, and we've just got to plan around them.
And the new regime takes effect from April 26, is that right?
That's right, yes. And there is a window of time then that one can take action, which we can talk about in terms of using a trust. So that's one potential line in the sand. But yes, otherwise it's just planning for the fact that in a number of months' time, this is the reality.
I think our clients have long mulled over issues around succession. As we've just discussed, now is a good time for that to really come to a head. Why are those discussions and those conversations within families so hard?
I don't think anything's ever easy within families, is it? And having open and honest conversations about things as personal as a business and money is something that us Brits just aren't very good at doing. But it's something that we have to overcome, and working with professionals to sort of bridge that gap and to make sure that the conversations are being had at the right time.
Let's say I'm a business owner. I have a good deal on my plate. This issue kind of slides and doesn't get addressed. What are the consequences for me? Because
if we want to scene set slightly, say you run a furniture business, it profits £750,000 a year. It might be worth £4.5 million, £5 million. Whereas previously, there wouldn't have been any inheritance tax on that, or there may not have been. Now, there could be hundreds of thousands of pounds. And unless there's liquidity in the rest of your estate to pay that inheritance tax bill, it means the business bears the brunt of that liability, which can be paid over 10 years, but still requires cash flow planning. The dynamic of what might be available to pass on to your children has shifted.
Is it fair to say that the inheritance tax changes run the risk of wrecking an otherwise sound business?
If not planned for correctly, then yes. And by that I mean an estate which has a business is very different to one that just has an investment portfolio, where if there's tax to pay, you just sell some of those investments and everyone moves on. Whereas with a business, there's a need probably to extract cash from that business, pay income tax on it, to then settle that inheritance tax bill over a period of time. So the impact is quite significantly different, and it means that there's potentially a burden that's being passed on, as well as an opportunity for that next generation to grow the business.
So we have this complete sea change in the way that inheritance tax hits family businesses. What can business owners do to mitigate this?
I think the most important thing is that everyone has to be moving in the same direction. That's the current generation of owners, any potential future generations, and any other key players, be that non-family management. And the important thing there is to ensure that the right conversations are being had, and there's an honest conversation at every stage, so that our clients who are thinking, oh, my son seems to have an interest in the business, I'm sure that the plan will be to pass it on and he'll continue to grow it. Son might have a completely different idea about what he wants to do with his life. So ensuring that everyone's being honest and coming at things with the same view is really important as part of that conversation.
So there's a risk not just to the business but to the family as a whole. What our clients typically do is get a number of different experts on side from a personal wealth or a tax perspective. What kind of options are open to business owners, and what kind of things can advisors suggest for them to consider?
Chris, the answer is there are always lots of different options, and the best one is often the simplest from our experience. And to sort of flesh that out a bit, when we're talking about mitigating inheritance tax in this new world that we're in now, some of our listeners will be aware that there are rules around gifting assets during lifetime. So passing shares down to the next generation is an option, and there's often a 7-year runoff associated with that from an inheritance tax perspective. Using trusts is a way of moving assets out of one's estate, but with some benefits from a control perspective, perhaps, as compared to a direct gift. There are dilemmas when it comes to if there are multiple children or other interested parties, who receives shares in the business, who doesn't, how do you manage that? So there's a lot of different options that people have. And to say, often keeping things as simple as possible usually provides the best longer term outcome.
Because ultimately when we're discussing changes within a business, we're talking about distribution of control, we're talking about distribution of benefits, and that's always contentious, and it can be hard to be fair across a family. There's plenty to discuss, but inclining towards the simpler option is often a good guide to the best answer.
Absolutely, yes. And there are lots of things that we can do. People might have concerns around future generations and risks of divorce or bankruptcy and all sorts of issues. And there are things that can be done to protect the business from those circumstances, be that pre or post-nup agreements or preemption rights that mean that even if there is a divorce, the business can ensure that its shares are not being held by the party that's sort of now no longer in the family. And that's a whole other podcast, Chris. There's plenty that we could talk about in terms of family protection and that kind of thing.
So Rob, a business is more than just the family who are running it. There'll be other people involved, whether they're key directors, key management, staff, key suppliers, key clients, and any change to our business will affect them also. What kind of considerations should business owners be thinking about with regard to people outside the family?
There's two really important things, Chris. One is the story of the business, and the second is getting the incentivization piece right for those non-family employees.
So there is good news there. The scope of these practical tools on hand for business owners is broader than it has been previously. Can you chat us through how those tools work?
Absolutely, and it depends really on the outcome of those discussions as what's best for the medium to long-term future of the business. If the answer is, let's plan for a sale over the course of a number of years, then incentivizing non-family members we can do through things like the Enterprise Management Incentive Share Scheme, a very tax-efficient way of motivating key employees to help drive the growth of the business towards that exit and maximise the value for the family.
You touched on sale just there, Rob, and I think this plays into the fact that there's a sea change in the way the businesses work in tax, and some families may look at their long-term plans, they may look at the business and say, actually, we need a significant change. We need to scale up or potentially downsize or fragment a business, or maybe even go for a complete sale. How does that often play out with your clients?
When we're talking about third, fourth or later generational family businesses, there's a real weight of responsibility on those incumbent family management to continue the legacy, and that can feel like quite a burden as well as an opportunity. But I think when we're talking about clients that are perhaps still at first generation, do I want to pass the business on to my children? Are they interested? People are a bit more practical at that stage as to the opportunities but also the threats posed to business nowadays, and alive to the fact that their children might have a completely different intention as to where they go with their lives.
The first part of our question today is, when's a good time to let go of the reins? So to take that simple but kind of big question, what's your answer?
Sometimes your son or daughter might be banging down the door, Chris, and I think that's generally quite a good.
Yes.
Gives you a bit of an inkling that it might be time to be having the discussions. If that's not the case, then it's really when feels right for you. When do you want to walk away? What other aspirations do you have for the remainder of your life? How tied do you want to be to the business?
What are other good reasons for key members of a family business to consider handing over the reins, whether that's gradually over a staged period or as part of a major change?
As a tax advisor, we're often focused on the most tax efficient way of doing this. And often that can be on a clean break basis. We had a client recently who wanted to take some cash off the table but also pass the business on at the same time. And the only really way to do that is one day you're part of the business, the next day you've cashed out some of your shares and you're gone. So there can be that approach, or there's the slowly gift shares over time, build up trust in the next generation, and then slowly disappear off into the background.
And the best approach, as always, is the one that's not just fully thought through, but is the one that you can stick with. And what may work for a similar company or someone may not work for you and your kind of family dynamics.
That's right, and it comes back to that question we had earlier around what are the options for people now, and for some, using a trust, putting shares into trust might be a good option, because that trust can be for the benefit of the family and wider family members for future generations. And that's that in part deals with that issue of who's going to own the shares and at what time, because we just have a long-term family vehicle that is the ownership structure now, and we incentivise and reward people in different ways with bonuses, for example.
As always, with so many of these issues which are quite large and complex, it can never be done in one fell swoop, but the most important thing is to start thinking and start the conversation by approaching people who can help. They'll never be able to kind of come up with a perfect answer, but this is a big problem that clients can eat away at bit by bit by bit, stage by stage, until they find themselves more prepared for what's to come. I should add that, as with all the things we talk about on this podcast, quite small differences in a business or in a family can have quite a big effect on what is right for them. So we always recommend clients speak to someone like you or any number of advisors to get a feel for their options and how they can be tailored to their circumstances.
Absolutely, Chris. And if I may, in terms of some calls to action here, the first one that I would say is if you are a business owner, understand the value of your business. And that might be wildly different from the number that you have in your head. Often the first port of call is to speak to a valuer.
Sure.
Work out what you've got, and then work from there to understand what your inheritance tax risk is. What is the liability, the potential liability that you're looking to mitigate as part of this planning.
So, Rob, one question that we always ask our guests on this podcast is, what is your most strongly held professional opinion? And don't be afraid to go all in.
And my answer is around family investment companies, which is something that's been hugely popular over the last decade or so.
This is my jam, I'm listening.
Traditional family investment company structure is, elder generation might have shares which have voting rights and dividend rights. Younger generation has shares with capital rights. Age-old wisdom, great. All future value of the business is going into those capital right shares. I have long thought, as have others in my firm, that an older generation holding voting rights, acting as directors, and having dividend rights, as the family investment company grows from 2 million to 5 million, they could just vote themselves a £3 million dividend. There is still inherent significant value in those shares. But valuers seem to think that that's not the case. HMRC's never taken the point, so I've stopped worrying about it.
Does this discrepancy play in clients' interests, do you think?
I'm very happy that I'm being proven wrong time and time again on that question, because as a structure it's very advantageous in terms of inheritance tax planning.
Sure, interested to hear it. Lots to chew on. You're not just a tax advisor, you are also a fully functioning human being at the same time, sometimes simultaneously. What is your spiciest personal opinion that you would nonetheless defend to the death?
Chris, I'm going to weigh in on the scone debate, because I think everyone is getting it wrong. My mum's family are rural Devon, Cornwall farmers, so scones, scone, it's in the blood. Everyone who's choosing jam first or cream first is doing themselves out of the opportunity for butter. Delicious scone, some nice Cornish butter, has to be salted, bit of jam, dollop of Rodder's cream. That's the way a scone should be eaten. I feel compelled to say that other clotted cream manufacturers are available.
I'm going to have to take you. I'm going to take you all on this. As a born Yorkshireman, I have to say it's got to be butter. Anything else is needless extravagance. Cream, jam, these are southern fripperies that weaken your soul and your moral constitution. But I'd expect nothing less of someone from down south, so I forgive you.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great note to end on. That's really valuable advice. It's a great starting point for any business owner watching who's thinking about some of the issues that we've discussed. It's been brilliant to have you on the podcast today, Rob. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. And I look forward to chatting with you more in the coming weeks.
Chris, it's been a great pleasure to be here with you, so thanks very much for the invitation.